What's going on, folks? Ted from Immersion here, and I am here with our good friend Greg, who you may have seen on the channel in a variety of capacities in the past. But we're here to talk about Greg's newest game that's now out on Kickstarter. It's got a couple days left to go. I've had the pleasure of playing this game about 3 or 4 times at this point.
Yeah.
But it's Domeskai Tamers. Would you
Yep.
like to tell people give me your pitch on how you would describe your
my
game to
pitch?
people? Yeah.
So Domeskai Tamers is the monster collecting taming RPG that you wanted. You wanted the freedom in all those games to do whatever you want. I made the game for you. Here's the thing. I love, clearly, for many years, I've loved Pokemon, but they've never had a workable RPG. They've always had like weird ones, or they had the one that were for kids. And I was like, I've always wanted to play one. And then everybody out there who has made one has made them super complicated. Where I'm like, this is, I don't want to have to have a computer to figure out what I'm doing. Like, I don't want to have to track all of this. So I finally said, like, I've got 2 other games under my belt. Let's crack the one that I've been afraid to tackle for many, many years. And I finally broke the code for myself.
Sure.
I finally wrote it, and then brought it to Gen Con, say 3 years ago to be like, do you want to play my new game?
Yeah. Now I've had the pleasure of playing pretty much every single one of them in the various forms of playtest. So this was definitely, I mean, some of the is just the people we had to play with and the story that we told, but I had a lot of fun with this game. It's not that hard to pick up, and actually I think every time we tested it, we had at least one, if not multiple, new people at the table, and everybody was able to pick it up and play it with relative ease.
Yeah.
So
there's always a little learning curve because it's not it's not D&D, it's not, it is a dice pool system, and you sort of have to wrap your brain around the sort of freedom when you look at your character sheet to be like, I'm going to pull this from here, and I'm going to pull this from here, and I'm going to pull that from there. And some things are more hard-coded in the game, but a lot of it is like, I don't know, how do you feel that should go? What do you think that makes sense for you? And generally, every time I played it, even with non-friends, like I did bring it to Breakout Con this last year and actually had complete strangers, and everybody gets it within the first 20 minutes of making a few rolls. So like, oh, I get it. Okay. And then they start giving me things like, can I do this and this and this? I'm like, sure, that sounds great. If you think that works, great, go for it. You put those together. Let's see how this goes.
So I guess let's talk about, we know why you made the game. We know that obviously the game is fun and it's been tested for a while. So why don't we talk a little bit more about the system, this dice pool system, to give people an understanding of how the game works?
So the dice pool system is, if you ever played anything like World of Darkness that uses all D10s, or Tales from the Loop that uses D6s, if you ever played any of those where you're pulling together a pool. So in my game, you have base stats, you have vocational skills, you have your background and goals, you have your bonds with your friends, you have other items, and they all give you various dice. So at the start, you're going to have a lot of D6s and a lot of D4s. As you grow and sort of advance through the game, those will move up to become D8s, D10s, and D12s. And you roll them together, and anything that's a 5 or higher is a success. So obviously, the larger the die, the more chances you are to succeed. The thing is that if you're using D4s, people always say, but those can't roll 5s. And I'm like, that is correct. Because if you roll a 1, we just add a complication to the scene. Originally, when I first wrote the game, I had 1s cancel out successes. And the immediate feedback from my first round of playtesters, like, this game is too hard. We can't do anything. And on paper, I'm like, but on paper it works. It's, you're like, exactly 50% if you take out those things. But a 50% success rate is not a fun. It's not a fun evening.
Sure.
Because I was rolling 100 times and coming out with the 50%. But if you make 8 rolls in a night, all of them are failures. that's
not
a
good time.
miserable experience.
Yeah.
That's just bad. So I changed it from a cancellation to a complication. So a complication really depends on what's happening in the scene. It can put you in a bad place. Characters have strain and stress, so like you can get more stressed, and the more stressed you are, then me as the DM or whoever is being the GM can roll those dice against you. So if you're stressed and you have like a D8 for stress, I'll roll that D8, and if I get a 5, I'm going to cancel out one of your successes because you're just overworked, you're tired. But the idea is not how I made sense of it with the D4. It's not that it's taking away your success, but when you're doing something that you are not skilled in and using a die that you're just like, I am not good at this, something is probably going to go wrong. Even if you succeed, something will probably have gone slightly out of shape or misaligned. There's some additional complication. So it also makes those D4s a little bit more interesting just because, well, I can't succeed, but it might add a little twist, something I have to deal with when I'm making these dice because I am going against what I'm good at. And also in the game, you can choose to say, actually, this situation, this stat, my understanding this is working against me, and change it into a D4 so you can get a fate point that you can use later. So you can add to the scene or get an extra die later. So you can kind of say, like, in this situation, I'm really strong, but it requires, a very soft hand, and I don't have that. So I'm going to say that, like, my bronze is working against me. I'll change it to a D4, and I'll get a fate point that will allow me to do something different later.
Okay, so you're downgrading your die size.
Yeah.
Okay. And again, because just in case that wasn't clear, I feel your dice pool is pretty clear, but you may be in an instance where you're throwing a 4, a 6, and an 8, let's say.
Yeah.
So, and then do you do degrees of success, right? You need 2 successes, or is it always just
most things are 1?
Okay.
There are in the games, like, if it's like normal difficulty is 1, hard difficulty is 2 successes. Pretty darn impossible is 3 successes because it's really hard to do in a dice pool system. It's really hard to get multiple successes. It's not impossible, but it is difficult to do, especially at low levels. Like if you're rolling 3d6, the chances that 3 of them are going to be a 5 or a 6 is pretty minimal.
Right.
So that is up to, like, the GM to decide, like, actually I think this is really difficult. You're going to need 2 successes to be able to do this. Or this is something that humans can't do, but let's see. Can you if you roll 3 successes, then we'll let it happen. And obviously the more skilled you are, like if you are rolling a D8 and 2 D10s, it is likely that you'll get those additional successes. But at that point, you're a very experienced person. Like, you've had to play my game a lot to get those skills up that high.
Sure. So, I mean, obviously, it's live on Kickstarter now. So we're going to, here in a minute, I'll pull up the Kickstarter page and we'll kind of just talk through what's going on with that. But I mean, we obviously know you've had a long interest with playing these kinds of games or wanting this exact game. What goes into designing a whole world, right, to play in, as well as all of the Domeskai and I mean, people know if you're expecting hundreds or at least 100 per kind of region.
Yeah.
You have to then come up with names that are good, that are catchy, that fit. Evolutions, as well as, different typing. That's a lot of creative brain work to go in to get that to happen. And then not only like, all right, you might come up with an idea, right? Like this is a cool name and this is a typing, but now I need to figure out what the art looks like to go along with that. What has that whole process been like for you?
So I will say the first 20 that I came up with were easy.
Okay.
And then it was clawing towards anything that I can remember. So I based it on my first region is based on where I live. I live in Minnesota. It's based on my childhood. It's based on the things that I ran into both in the Scandinavian culture and then in the general sort of as I lived in the world, what I've run into. So like the first three starters were my three starters were pretty easy. I knew what I sort of wanted from them and what I wanted them to look like. I kind of wanted my cute plant. I kind of wanted the charming bug. And I was like, I kind of want a scary fire thing. So I had that idea. And then kind of how they appear in the book, honestly, is the order that I thought of them and came up with them. So at the very beginning, like I have the three starters, and then I was like, okay, so now I know what they look like, kind of, and I know generally where they are. Now I have to come up with names. And names is really just a lot of sitting down and thinking of what are they made of? What do they look like? What exists in the world that I'm kind of pulling from? Like the fire starter, Inferno and Geist. Geist is sort of German for ghost, so like big fire ghost.
Sure.
So those were pretty easy to put together. And then it just is like, I want a scary puppet. What does a scary puppet mean? It's okay. So I have like terror is scary and puppet. So then I came up with like Terrepit.
Yeah.
And it was really when I was designing the game, like I would say like the first one, it came easy. And then I would just stew on things that I thought were interesting or that I liked or that I felt that I needed. And then sit there and think, what am I missing?
Mm-hmm.
I had a big list of all the types, so I was like, I want to try to keep them even so that there's not one that's overrepresented by the other. And the biggest thing is I had to decide what my types were.
Right.
And that the types, going with 13 types, because it's like, okay, 13 is a good number. And then trying to come up with a weakness and resistant chart. That chart took me 4 months to make.
Okay.
Because I would write things down and then I would check the order and be like, I doubled up there, that doesn't work. And if I doubled up there, I did something wrong somewhere else, and then I would swip them around. And I started to try. At first, I was trying to apply logic to it to be like, here's my reasoning for this, and then eventually I was like, I just need these things to work. I need another resistance here, so it's going to be this, and I'll come up with a story about it later.
So you mean like trying to justify why a bird is better?
Yes.
It's hard to punch a bird, so
yes, it's hard to punch
that
a bird,
kind of
so
a thing.
fighting is good.
Fighting
is
good against, yeah.
So by 13 types, they're a little different from probably anybody who's played Pokemon or other games than what their normals. But I promise I had logic for all of them. I do have a reason that they exist in the way that they do. I did come up with a story. So if anybody asks, I can say, oh, it's because of this. This is what I was thinking when I was thinking. Like, air types are weak to lightning and infection because lightning, obviously, if a bird gets struck by lightning, you're up in the air. But infection is because of airborne diseases.
Okay.
That was where I was like, okay, this makes sense to me. Airborne infection. Great.
Sure. Makes sense. So we've got obviously all the types. We've got, was it over 100?
We have 100.
100.
So the first group is exactly 100. I have, because just like before, when I had a good idea, I would jot it down. After I made my first 100, I'm like, oh, I have another idea. So I would jot that down. So for the second region, if we go forward with that, I have the next 100 done.
Oh, okay. Wow.
I have those 100 done because, I've been developing this for 3 years. So as I had ideas, I'd be like, quick, jot that down. Jot down that little snippet of an idea, and I can decide what it is later, but I think this is a good idea. Like when I was coming up with this, like Flitmonk was because I have chipmunks and they dart around very, very quickly. And I was like, okay, so what do I do if a chipmunk could teleport? And so I kind of wrote like teleporting chipmunk. I will come back to that and figure out what that is. And so a lot of the process was just, I'd have an idea of, oh, this is a thing. I kind of like this combination. I like this idea of a teleporting squirrel or teleporting chipmunk or a scary puppet or a big bear. What would make a big bear interesting? Well, what if it was a psychic bear?
Sure.
What if it had psychic powers?
Yeah.
So I would write those things down, and then sit and sort of flesh them out and figure out, well, what is the typing going to be? What makes sense? And really, once I got around 80 of them done, I was like, okay, so I now need to start filling in gaps. So there are things that I know I don't have. Like these are combinations, or at this point I have way too many water types. I need to balance it out by bringing other types in. And then I would just fill out the roster. And then when I was making the second group of 100, I had a big list of, here are combinations I didn't use the first time.
Makes sense.
What can I do the second time around to sort of fill in that hole? And I never really thought, never in the process did I think about, like, does that make them super weak to something? Does that make them very resistant to something? It was just like, this typing makes sense for the idea that I have, and the rest falls out how the rest falls out.
Gotcha. So for those, for everybody who's out there who's played, a Pokemon game before and are like, this was the thing that I like about that game, whether that's catching them all, whether that's trading, exploring, potentially breeding, all that kind of stuff. What kind of aspects that are core functions of the game are present here in this TTRPG?
So catching, you can obviously catch them as many as you want. Battling,
sure.
I replaced gyms with a tournament system. I replaced contests with a pageant system.
Okay.
I don't really have breeding because that serves a very specific function.
It's
in
competitive.
The game
primarily.
That's competitive. So there are daycare people around. There are people like in my world who have farms who are raising Domeskai. Like, you can add that in however that looks for you. I didn't feel the need to code that in because ultimately it's the same stats no matter what you do.
Right.
It's like, I don't have varying stats.
EV training.
I mean, I do. So EV training is in the shared stats.
Okay.
So whenever you pick up a new Domeskai, there are 3 shared stats. One is your bond with them, the other is the attack, and the other is the defense. So you can decide, I am training, basically EV training, by putting the die more into attack, or I'm putting the die more into defense. The thing that I struggled with was how I wanted to have evolution, and I didn't want it to... It felt weird to just try to come up with the XP requirement for all of them without it feeling just like another weird drain on... Like, just having XP go towards leveling didn't feel great for me. So evolutions are based off of your bond with your Domeskai. So once your bond with your Domeskai reaches its evolution rating, then you can choose to evolve. Again, you never have to evolve them. You don't have to. If you're just like, I just want to keep it like this forever, great. Yeah. The shared stats help make up for the fact that their base stats won't change. Okay. You can just constantly pump in bond and defense and attack, and they can stand on their own. But it was really important to be like, the closer you are with the Domeskai, and that's kind of a thing that they talk about in the games and the anime of Pokemon a little bit, like, our friendship brings out their potential, and I
Yeah.
wanted to play with that in the game. So you get the benefit of having a bond die that you can use with them, so that, you know, you're showing how much of attachment and how well you work together as a pair. But also it plays up that idea is that as you've grown in friendship with them, they are more likely to unlock their power, evolve, change because of your connection with them. I made an early on decision that, you know, crystals don't use. I mean, the fact that you throw a Pokeball and it breaks is just an in-game resource thing for video games, and I'm like, that doesn't happen here. I don't
Right.
need it. Like, if you really want to, you can play with the economy. Like, I have rules for how much everything costs and making money, and like, you can play that game if you want. The rules are in there, but also that has never interested me. So I also just like, you know what? A crystal stays an empty crystal until you successfully use it, or in game something happens to it. Like,
Right.
you drop it, it breaks, some major
Stolen
catastrophe
or
that it
something.
gets stolen,
Yeah.
whatever. But I kind of wanted to leave that much more open, because this is really people's version of what they want from a game. This is your control. It's not a pre-scripted. It's not, you could go anywhere you want. There are bad guys, and you can ignore them if you wish and do your own thing. You know, again, you're making your own plot lines, and that was ultimately the biggest goal. There are different cities. There are, you know, different, you know, I came up with 13 types. There are 10 different cities. They all have their own sort of unique flavor.
Mm-hmm. We have an evil team.
There's an evil team.
Is there only one, or is there multiple?
There's only one in this one.
Okay. One thing that actually came up at Gen Con that I thought was really cool is, for the first time I experienced this, well, not me personally, but somebody at our table, you have added in the functionality similar, if you prefer the anime, where you obviously can go about, like you do in the games, and some people do in the anime, capturing via crystals.
Mm-hmm.
But we had somebody just bond with a Domeskai, like Ash has happen all the time. They just show up and join because he's nice to them or whatever. And that was there's a functionality and mechanics to allow you to just win over them, and then they just want to voluntarily join you, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, there are rules to handle it with battling, but I always tell people, or any other way you think you want to go about this, we're not confined to programming.
Mm-hmm.
This is up to you. How does your character want to react to that? When I was running it on stream for our friends LB and Kuju and them, they were traveling with a professor, and they're like, well, can you just convince them to join you? And I'm like, his honest answer was, that really depends on what the Domeskai wants. Some will be like, no, prove your strength to me.
Right.
And that gives me, as a GM, the ability to be like, okay, this one's very friendly, and you know, or the situation is they're very scared and they're looking for a protector. You step in and do the protection thing, and then they're much more likely to join up with you. And some of them are like, no, I don't think you're strong enough. I don't think you're good for me. You're going to need to prove it in battle that you know what you're doing, and then I'll join your team.
Right.
I really wanted to let people play in that world and be able to do things like the anime does, but also whatever else that they want to do. And another thing that I always tell people when we're playing Domeskai is, the moves that are on the character sheet for the Domeskai are just for battle. They can do anything you want outside of battle that makes sense for the creature that's in front
made
of
out
you.
of fire or with vines or whatever.
So, like, Nixieed has wings. Sure, it can fly up. It can fly down. It can't do that in hard-coded battle because it's not an attacking move. But outside, go wild. It's a bird. Yeah, a bird can fly.
Right.
It's a fire creature. It can set a fire. It's
Sure.
made out of water. It can slide under a door. Like,
Yeah.
you aren't limited to what is hard-coded or allowed. You can do whatever you want, which is really why I wanted to make the game. I wanted to be able to play these games and have them feel like it's my world, and I can have my creatures do what I think they should be able to do to get me out of situations.
So speaking of moves and combat, if we're not gonna have like like a traditional hard coded thing for breeding, which is typically used to gain certain moves you wouldn't have
Mm-hmm.
access to, do you have an analog for like
Yes.
TMs and things to learning extra moves?
So
I know
in the
they get them when
world,
they evolve, right?
they get
Like,
them when they evolve. But also, if you run into anybody whose Domeskai knows that move, they can teach them.
oh,
That's sort
okay,
of like, if you can find somebody that knows how to do it, then they can teach it. So that opens up the ability to be like, oh, I'm going to go to a specialist. I'm going
sure,
to go to this person. Like, it opens up that door of the daycares exist, the farms exist, the razors exist, the tournament champions exist. They all have ways to teach you how to do things. It opens that sort of anime montage of I'm going to my specialist for super special training, and out of it I'm going to learn this new move.
gotcha.
And I made the decision early on that move trees
Hmm.
were way too complicated.
Okay.
So any Domeskai can learn any move that exists.
Oh, okay.
Doesn't matter.
So
It
I
just
could be an infection type and learn flame type or something. And
sure
it's not
can.
okay.
Yep, you can use fire, you can use whatever.
Okay.
The thing is, stab exists. So
Okay.
stab
Okay.
exists in the game.
Sure.
So if it matches one of your types, you step up the damage die. If you don't have a typing match, it just stays at the base damage die, whatever that is.
Okay.
So there's a little bit of there's that part of it where you can like, obviously you want to maximize what you can. So you want to be able to do more damage with your kind of signature type moves, but also you have a wide variety of other moves. There are 13 types. I wrote 10 moves for each types. So there's in this base game 130 moves for you to choose from. And when I was designing all of the Domeskai, I went through and made sure that every move appears on one of the Domeskai in the games. One creature knows one of those moves, at least.
I was gonna say it would be interesting. And there's not an easy way to do it. It'd have to be random, but it would be interesting, if you caught the same Domus guy that I caught, and the one that you caught had different moves than the one that I caught. So that way we could then be like, oh wait, you have one that does this, and then we could trade. That's very, train. So that's very interesting. I like this concept. Now, for people who are obviously hardcore battlers out there, I know just from what I've seen, I remember seeing primarily damage moves. Are we having status effect boosting moves and
Oh, we
things?
have we have a lot of set. So
Okay, good.
there is so Rosebaron is the first starter, my darling, my
Hmm.
big rose. And one of the main moves that I created for them is called Hedge Maze. So
Hmm.
they actually just make a hedge maze on the battlefield,
Hmm.
but the one that they target is in the center. So everybody else gets what's called a hidden status. So it takes 2 successes to hit them because they're lost in the maze. But the one that the maze was created around doesn't get that. They are wide open, so everybody can dart in, hit them, and then leave. There are moves where you create a smoke screen. So you just make a big cloud that obscures sight. I have one where you make a tree that's got berries on it, and people can eat berries off the fruit and heal.
Okay,
So
yeah. Well,
they,
that's to
yeah,
explain, because you hear about it and you're thinking, okay, it's just dice, right? I'm rolling
yeah.
higher, better, bigger die means more damage means I do better. But the fact that there is complexity
Yeah.
to the gameplay, and there's a reason potentially to seek out these other moves for
Yeah.
builds that you might come up with, or if you're setting up maybe, a setup phase to, swap in somebody else that might be in a better spot because whatever you set up,
Yeah.
it has that level of complexity for people who are
Yes.
looking for that, which
Yeah,
is
it
good.
can get very complex if you want it to. Or you can just stick with the base moves that just do damage and be like,
Sure.
that's fine.
Yeah. But no, that's good that it hits
Yeah.
both aspects because
Yep.
I'm sure we both know plenty of people that will have 4 attack moves that are the same
Yep.
stab type
Yep.
because that's what you want. And then you've got your other person that's got, stealth rocks and sword stance and is doing a whole setup team built specifically to counter other things. So
Yep.
it's good that the game has that level of complexity. And then obviously the more regions that release, the more moves
Mhm.
that come out, the more complex the game will
Yeah.
become. And that will, give more of that to folks who want to dive as deep as they want to
Yeah.
into that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot of combinations that I'm like, well, I don't think that's too broken, but it might be broken. I don't know. Everything for as many things as there are setups, there are also an equal amount of moves that remove remove all the setups you've done.
Mhm.
So I have things like Refreshing Mist, which just sends out and says, hey, every stat that you raised, every status that you gained, it's gone.
Okay, yeah,
We
so
just removed it.
you've got cleanses and stuff.
Yeah.
That's good because like I said, I think most of the time, and again, it's just the nature of a one-off at a convention. We were dealing primarily in the
Yeah.
terms of just damage, but we have maybe 3 hours to play, and that's it.
Right.
So
Right.
that makes sense.
Yeah, you can. I wanted combat to be as easy as you wanted it to be, or as complex that you wanted it to be. My goal was, I always thought, what does high level D&D combat look like? I still want to be lower than that in complexity, but I know where my upper limit will be. I know sort of where I kind of want it to be in levels of, is this impossible to track? And originally I had a lot of different timings for things, and then in the most recent pass, I was like, that is really not great to keep track of. Like, what turn am I on? Especially when there are moves that allow turn orders to get reversed.
Okay.
So a lot of them are just like, you make this change and it lasts until it's either removed or the battle is over. That's
Sure.
it. I just made it much, much cleaner. There's still a few that are like, no, it's kind of important. The timing of this is kind of important, so I'm going to let it last until like the start of your next turn, whenever that happens.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, I didn't want it to be really a massive problem to like keep track of. And one of the good things of having a dice pool is if you have a stat that you raised, you can just take a physical die and put the new raised level on your sheet, and you're like, okay, well, it's this die right now because I've raised my stat.
Sure.
So it allows you to sort of just see visually what you've done and let other people see visually that, because there are moves that will also steal your stat changes. So if you've done 2 rounds of setup, somebody can come in and say, hey, great, I'm going to take all of those, and you're going to get nothing.
And just to level set here, we're no held items, right? Or are we doing held
no
items?
No held items.
Okay.
I didn't do held items mainly because in this first iteration, I didn't have a good idea of what those would look like that would make combat more interesting. For pageants, you can dress them up. So pageants have a whole costume section to them. So in that way, like, you can create items and dresses, hats, or whatever you think fits, and that will add to your performance. But in combat, it felt more clunky when we still really haven't sold people on, here's 130 moves and make some stuff work.
Right.
Like, even in the base games, there's not a lot of held items that make a whole lot of difference. That it's just like, But there's also an entire crafting system in there.
Okay.
So
what would you be crafting?
You can make items, and those items will give you a die in battle. So people are free to come up with things like, I'm going to give my Domeskai a tube that lets it concentrate down, and that tube is a D6. So I'll add an extra D6 to my attacks because it's like, can aim better. That's your choice if you want to add that in. I didn't hard code anything in, but there's an entire idea around crafting where you can make things, and those things add dice to your dice pool.
Okay.
So I think one time we were playing, I think we were playing with Sarah, and Sarah made a bunch of nets.
Yes, 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 yes.
And I'm like, yeah, you have nets, and nets will help you do things. Like you have a D6 net on your
Yeah, catching
sheet.
infection type or
Yeah,
things like that.
yeah,
So
yeah,
or water types, things that would make sense in this
yeah,
situation. So it sounds like if you wanted to, you'd be more in like the X attack,
yeah.
sort of like a one-off, not like a perma buff in some way. But there's an
Right.
opportunity if crafting is something that you like, you've got that aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
So we've talked, and I'm just trying to think about like hitting the core fantasies of
Yeah.
the world, right? We talked about catching, gathering, battling, pageantry, crafting. If let's say I like the concept of the lore, right, and
Mm-hmm.
exploring and researching, what do we have in there for someone who really dives into that kind of aspect of the games?
The adventure book that I wrote. So there's a companion adventure book that's a 10 adventures
Hmm.
that are lined up, and they go into the lore. The
Okay.
lore is written into, there's a lore section in the book, but the adventure book actually sort of walks through what the bad team is doing with the lore and the creatures that are in the lore. There are 3 legendaries that are available,
Hmm.
uh, and it talks about, the adventure book will walk through encountering and dealing with those legendaries and the evil team that wants to use them for nefarious purposes. But otherwise, the lore is roughly spelled out in the core book, so you can
Okay.
decide how that, if you're like, I don't want to use adventure book, I want to do my own thing. It's
Sure.
spelled out in there, and you can explore it. I've left a lot of mysteries in there because I don't necessarily want to answer everything. I
Sure.
have the way I run my world that might not be interesting to you. So there are a lot of gaps. And there are gaps for a reason. There are things that the researchers, the professors of the world are still trying to figure out. They're like, what is this mystery? So I have hints. I have a couple of ideas, but you can pick that up if you want and explore with it, or don't. It's up to you. But like, if you get the adventure book does walk you through. There are Domeskai in the adventure book that also have specialized moves based on the trainers that I built in there. So you'll run
Oh,
into
okay.
ones that are not, they're not standard. They have things that they can do that are not listed in the core rule book. So if you pick up the adventure book, it is a beginning to end. They're all connected. 10 adventures that will take you to just about every city that's in the region that's spelled out in the core.
Well, I gotta ask, shinies. What do we got?
I didn't want to hard code art,
That's
alternate
a lot
art.
of that's 100 extra
One,
pieces of
it's
art.
100 extra pieces. 2, you can decide yourself how it's actually colored if you want. Like,
Oh,
what
you
is
mean
it
I
like?
don't have to have a slightly different shade of green
No, no.
for my
Like,
horrible shiny?
for horrible shit does have
My
to be
my,
done the
my
separate
shiny,
agreed.
slightly lighter purple
Um,
Gengar. I don't have to
you
have
know,
that.
no, yeah, it's off.
Uh-huh.
We just chroma keyed it a little bit. I thought about it. We thought about also, like, when we were making card games and the ideas of card games, we'd have one in there that was an alternate pack, but I kind of felt like I don't really want to hard code. I don't want to hard code it that much. I want, here's the base form, and use your imagination. What does
Okay.
yours look like?
Sure.
Um, how does it differ? Are the patterns different? Are the body of it? But like, the art in the book is like, here's just the standard. Here's the standard,
Yeah.
and then go with how you feel. Um, I struggled a lot with the shiny aspect of it, and did I want 2 pieces of art? Do I want to hard code it? And ultimately, I settled on, like, I don't want to lock people into, there are 2 choices.
Mm.
I just like, there. This is the main, and then you do the rest. Does yours look different? Is the coloring more yellow, red, blue, whatever? Great. That is what you have. That is what you found. if one of them calls out to you and you're like, I really wish it was this color, just go ahead and say it's that color. Talk to your GM and be like, I think I've run into this one.
All right, so I'm scrolling through the Kickstarter just to see. And again, congratulations on making your pledge goal. We've still
Thank
got
you.
5 days left to go. So just kind of scrolling through to see what we've got. We obviously have the core offerings here are the core book that we talked about, the 10 adventures in the adventure book, Adventures in Nord Soda. You've got a reference deck, which is what it looks like to me is stats on one side, art on the other, right?
Yeah, so that was one of my big asks whenever I was doing this, because it was very... The thing that I started to struggle with as a GM is I have all of these sheets in front of me and I have to be aware of their stats, and then I have to... So what I wanted to be able to do is say, you've run into this creature. And so the one side is the picture, and you can slide it on the top of your GM screen, put a clip on there, and then the part facing you are the stats. The thing that the GM needs is on the back. So they can see what they're fighting, and you just have the stats and be like, okay, I have that up there so I know how I'm building my dice pool. And then when they capture it, you can pass the card off and say, stats are in the back, just copy it onto your sheet, you're good to go, and you can keep that picture in front of you. It was really sort of a thing that's like, in general, it makes the game easier to play from just there's 100 creatures, and
still have to keep track of.
It's a lot to keep track of. So having reference cards just makes that easier and a more enjoyable experience.
I see the GM screen, as you alluded to. We've got dice and tubes as well as dice trays. I like the crystal design on the dice tubes.
So the crystals, the tubes are designed to look like the capture crystals. And what we did that was interesting in the idea is, so each crystal has a item die rating. So the basic crystals, the standard crystals, add a D6 to your pool. So in the standard crystal tube, there are more D6s. In the next one up, you get a D8. There are more D8s. And the next one up, there's a D10, so you get more D10s. And the final one, it's a D12, so there are more D12s. So the crystal tubes align with the capture crystals as far as what dice you need and what dice you need more of.
And then I see they are designed to fit nicely inside the dice tray, which is a nice little quality of life for that as well. And then as we're scrolling through, we can see that. Then we get to card games, and I see we have a green, red, and blue version. Very clever. I love the box art for that. I haven't had a chance to experience this. Looks like it's 2 to 6 players, 10 to 20 minutes. What's going on with the card games?
So what's interesting is another designer at the same time that I was working with Domeskai, with Japanime Games, came up with a monster card game, and it is a sort of trick-taking, but not. You choose a card, place it face down in the center, shuffle the card, deal face up, and then they have things that happen on the cards as you grab them. So if you already have if you don't have that species in your collection, you can capture it successfully. If you already own that species, then those two clash and you have to discard them. So there's a lot of sort of, I'm trying to diversify my team, so I want to get certain Domeskai in that don't match the ones that I already have. And then each of those also have various powers that are on the cards that will also sort of be like, okay, well, if you get this happens. If you get that, then this other things happens. So it's kind of like I would say it's trick-taking, except you're not matching. You're trying to get it diversified, and I don't know what the term for that is. But there are 3 separate game boxes. So there's green, blue, and red, and there are different Domeskai in all of them. So there are a set that appear in green, there's a set that appears in blue, and there's a set that appears in red, and they do not overlap. So you're gonna like if you get all three, you will get a large deck of a bunch of uh different Domeskai. It's a very fast game. Like you can play it literally 10 to 20 minutes. It goes very, very fast. Um and it is sort of a push your luck sort of a thing as well.
Okay.
Yeah, it's we were making all these creatures. We had a really fun card game that sort of just had like I don't know what the monsters look like. So it made like it made great sense to sort of just combine the two together. Like I have created 100 monsters and you need 66 of them. So
Sure.
let's go.
All right. I see we've got, let's see. We have our variety of tiers here. I'll just kind of high level touch on these. So as low as $20, you're getting access to it digitally. You also have the option to get things physically, which is nice. You can get a combo. You can get just the card games if that interests you. You can get just sort of the base game, if you will, with the screen, the reference cards, or you can kind of go all in and just get all the card games as well as all of the physical aspects here. And then obviously you can do different add-ons if you're looking for just other things. And it looks like we do have a enamel pin stretch goal here as well.
Yep.
4 pins.
Yep. So there is Spiss. If we hit the 20K, the Spiss pin goes to everybody. And then they'll add in the 4 pin set as an available add-on for that.
Nice.
And there are additional stretch goals past this that we sort of talked about. They're high level tiers. I will do more writing for the game. So at high levels, I have committed to writing another series of adventures for the adventure book. So we'll see if we get there. I think the pin set's really, really cute.
Definitely.
I like how the ones that they chose. Yeah, and then kind of unveil things as we get there.
It looks like if what's on here on Kickstarter is accurate, looking to deliver digital only good possibly sometime in February of next year, with physical goods looking to roll out in May of next year. Which is pretty solid, aggressive turnaround time.
It's aggressive turnaround time. It is also, look, world economy isn't great right now. It's a little difficult to ship things in the world. If you've tried to get anything from Canada, good luck. It's a hard no. So these are the goals based on the world staying relatively steady as it is right now. I'm not going to lie. Every game company out there is facing this exact same problem. The economy and the tariffs are completely chaotic, and they change at a moment's notice. So we have built out a schedule that is based off of what has happened in the past, what feels to be a normal timeline. This could change because we don't know. So I don't want to promise like you'll for sure get these things, because we really have to admit that everything is really chaotic right now, and there's a lot of game companies that are trying to vie for the same thing to try to get things in. But that is the hope. The digital ones for sure, like all the writing is done. I've written everything I'm going to write, unless we get a stretch goal that says I have to write more. And it's all set and established. So for sure, those digital things, I will say that's for sure to happen. Physical printing of things is the one that's a little more up in the air, simply because the world is up in the air.
So I mean, I think we pretty much covered everything. But before we close this out, is there anything you want folks to know about Domeskai Tamers that we didn't discuss here, or any other kind of things you want to highlight before we bring this interview to a close?
I've put everything that I've loved about those games, everything that I've loved about Pokemon, everything I've loved about any sort of monster catching, taming and distilled it down into the parts that I think are really fun, that capture the feel, and I put them into this game. You've played it. You kind of
Yes.
know, like, hey, this is the experience that I want. Everybody who's played it has loved it, which is thrilling for me because it just makes me like, yep, this is the game that I wanted it to be. And it behaves how I want it to be, and it does what I want it to do. And as per my standard rule, helping each other is easy. It's a bond die. Your bond with your Domeskai and with your friends helps you in game to help you succeed. That was a big important part. It's a big important part of how I make all of my games, that it's easy to help each other. So I really want this to feel like you and your players are on a trip together, supporting each other, getting through each other, and then when it comes to the time to do a tournament against each other, like those things are off the table and you're just focusing on your own character, but then after that you come back together, and maintain those friendships. I really wanted to feel like everything people have loved about those games, with now the freedom to do whatever story you wanted to do, with 100 very unique, interesting creatures that I think everybody is generally surprised by. Like, I didn't expect you to come up with something like that, and I love it or I hate it. Look, the entire success, you can love things, you can hate how they look, but I want you to be able to evoke that emotion of, that thing is hideous, I will never have it on my team, or that's my most precious baby and I will protect it forever. Those are the extremes that I was going for, and I think I hit it.
Yeah, like I said, Greg and I go way back, and the opportunity has presented itself to play this game 3 or 4 times, and I know Greg and like Greg well enough that if I didn't enjoy his game, I would have said, "Nah, I'm good." I would have it would have been very easy to say, "I don't think I can make it to that game tonight," but I went out of my way to sit down and play it because I did have so much fun. So it definitely, I had a good time, and I mean that's really the best endorsement I can give any RPG that I play, is that I played it, I had fun, so I know that can be done. It's just got to get the right group together, and it's more to come. Hopefully, if things go well.
Yeah.
So
I will say the first time I played it with you all, that final moment when the next to impossible task couldn't, like, capturing legendary was next to impossible to do because you had all just started, and when it happened, the cheer that you all gave, I still ride that high because that is exactly what I wanted that to feel like, exactly how I wanted it to be. And you turned to me and said, up until that moment, I was like, I don't know if this is a workable mechanic. And then when it happened and you got that sense, I'm like, yes,
yes,
that is what was supposed to happen. It was a very hard thing to do, and you all came together to make that happen, and that was the experience. And that's when I knew, right? I knew then, I'm like, this is sold. This is good.
yeah. So it's like I said, I definitely, I mean, I know I'm going to be picking this up. I'll have links down in the video description to Greg's social media. Top of the video description, and a pinned comment will be the link to the Kickstarter if you'd like to go pick up a copy for yourself. And Greg, I hope to see the next region very soon because I have a deep investment in that next
Yeah,
region.
you've gotten a preview of where the next region
Yeah,
is.
yeah, it's
I will.
definitely Ted coded for
It
sure.
is TED coded, and I do have those 100 done, and I'm already working on the next set for the third. So
So
again, as I have my ideas, I jot them down, and I'm like, that's gonna go over there. It's like, I can't do it here, but I can put it over there. It will happen over there. So yeah, I'm. Hopefully this is a success. I do want to write more. I want to keep doing more of the regions. Next one is a little TED coded.
yes,
I have other surprises that I haven't told Ted about it. So
well, we'll cover it when the time comes.
we
So
will.
anyway, thank you, Greg. We'll if people that want to find you, they'll be able to get access down in the video description there. Or, maybe they'll see you out and about at one of the many conventions we find ourselves at over the
PAX
next.
Unplugged is next.
Yeah,
I'll be there.
We'll both be at PAX Unplugged. So chances are, if you find one of us, you find the other one. So hope to see you there. So anyway, thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.